Venice is home to one of the most haunted locations in all of Italy, if you are unaware of this fact. The island of Poveglia, which is made up of 3 smaller islands, is just that. Because there are so many rumors and stories that circulate about this island, it may be difficult to determine what is real and what is fabricated when it comes to this particular island. Poveglia is made up of 3 islands, 2 of which were produced by natural processes, while the 3rd island is designed to look like Venice by using wooden pillars and layers of dirt. There is one island that is completely covered in flora, another island that is home to the primary structures, and the smallest of the islands is an octagon that serves as a tiny fort to secure the island and function as a fort before arriving in Venice. Poveglia is a sailing vessel that may be seen drifting off the southwest corner of Lido di Venezia. There are just a few modest structures on the main island, which is completely deserted, that are still standing on the island today. The first people to settle on the island arrived in the 7th century, and throughout the course of the subsequent centuries, it developed into a tranquil, small village that stayed away from invasions that occurred on the mainland. Because they avoided the mainland, they were also fortunate enough to avoid paying taxes, which resulted in the creation of a very happy society. The Italian peninsula was mostly avoided by them, although they did engage in commerce with Palestrina, which was located close. The Chioggia War, which took place in the 14th century and was a protracted struggle between the maritime republics of Genoa and Venice, resulted in the island being abandoned. After that, the population was moved to the central region of Venice, primarily to the island of Giudecca. The Republic of Venice did not bring it back to use as a storage facility until the 18th century. Prior to then, it had been used for various purposes. In the years that followed, in the year 1776, it was brought under the authority of the local public health office. In the beginning, it was used for the purpose of controlling customs, but later on, it was repurposed as a location for controlling disease. During the year 1793, 2 ships that were halted for inspection were found to contain many instances of the plague. As a result, they were compelled to remain here, and from that point on, the island became a quarantine station for the plague. As a result of the fact that the other 2 islands in Venice that serve as quarantine, Lazzaretto Nuovo and Lazzaretto Vecchio, were both at capacity, patients were transferred to Poveglia. In spite of the fact that the epidemic had receded, it continued to serve as a quarantine station for ships that were traveling to Venice. Over the course of the 20th century, it was converted into a facility that housed a mental health facility. Currently, the island is controlled by the government and is absolutely devoid of any inhabitants. On the other hand, there have been many attempts made to sell it to private owners. To put it another way, this is one of the rumors that are circulating. Because of the large number of people who had died as a result of the plague, the hospital was at a loss for how to dispose of the dead, so they decided to burn them. In spite of the fact that this seems to be sensible, research reveals a different picture. There were around 100,000 casualties, and rather than being burnt, they were placed in what are known as plague pits. The actual number of victims varies, although it seems that most of them were burned. Trying to determine which version of the tale is more terrifying is a difficult task. Tens of thousands of people lost their lives on the island, and their corpses were left there thereafter, regardless of the manner in which the bodies were disposed of. The director of the facility is said to have gone insane and leaped from the clock tower, according to a different narration of the tale. It was not the leap that led to his death, as the tradition goes, but rather a mystery fog that was responsible for his passing. In addition to being renowned for being somewhat mad, this physician was also notorious for conducting experiments on patients, which included executing a number of lobotomies. On the other hand, despite the fact that you could come across this tale quite often in a variety of different narratives about Poveglia, It was originally first presented in American television shows such as Ghostbusters. Despite the fact that there was an asylum on the island, there is no evidence to substantiate the presence of such a doctor on the island, nor is there any record of an attempt to commit suicide. According to yet another mythology about the island, the inmates of the mental institution would often see the specters of the epidemic, and the sufferers would feel even more tormented as a result of these experiences. It is sad that these legends cannot be substantiated in their entirety, hence it continues to be yet another enigma surrounding Poveglia Island. Although there are many legends that are exaggerated, there is one thing that can be said with absolute certainty. For such a tiny island, an extremely high number of people have lost their lives here. The horrors of the plague, the wars of Venice and Napoleon that were fought on and around the island, or even the passage of time spent in a mental institution, might have contributed to the development of this condition. Looking at the area that has been abandoned and the buildings that have been demolished, it is impossible not to feel the burden of the patients who formerly resided on this island and to think about the tragic history of the island.